February 4th meeting of the Board of Supervisors. I appreciate if everybody stand. I will lead us in the pledge tonight. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a guest here tonight that's going to give us a presentation, but since he's here, he might as well do the moment of silence. And I would suggest he comes up here.
Everybody would remain standing, please. We have a moment of silence for the brave men and women and the troops, EMS, fire, everybody that protects us on a day-to-day basis. Give them the opportunity and the strength to continue doing what they're doing. And God bless those that have given their life for the protection of us. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We will be live streaming it as we always have done recently. And with that, I'll give you the chairman's report, which has got 2 items on it. One is the board met in executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss a personnel matter. And the second item is the zoning hearing board will conduct a hearing concerning the Malvern Institute on February 10th at 7 p.m. That's kind of like, let's get together and find out exactly what we're going to do and when we're going to do it. That's what that's all about. So for those that are interested in that, I would say you want to be here, but at the same time, I would suggest, I think it's on the website, both the decision that the zoning hearing board made and the results of that the Judge Tennell made with respect to that, because both of those things are going to be important in resolving this issue with the Malvern Institute. So that's what we got on that.
It's just important to note that that meeting is not a meeting to make a decision. It's a meeting to make a decision on the process going forward, not on any of the
Substantive.
So it's a meeting to figure out how we're going to.
This is very important for everybody to understand. David was in California for a week. He wasn't allowed to say anything, so we don't know what he's going to say this evening. So it's a pleasure to have David back, I must say. Usually we listen to Mike, and tonight we'll listen to David.
I yield most of my time to my colleagues on the left.
I'll be quiet.
Is there public meeting? Is there anybody here to make comments that aren't on the agenda? What are the comments about?
So noise ordinance.
Pardon me?
Can you go to the microphone?
It's not too long. Come on up here.
So it's going to be about 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay, can you go to the microphone?
The reason for the mic, for those that are here, is for the people in the live stream can see who it is and what they're saying.
Right, so Bill Geyer, 1560 Tangerville Drive, Margie is here as well. Wanted to speak on the noise ordinance topic.
Is that
Yeah, you have to speak,
on?
Mr. Geyer, you have to speak pretty close to the mic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Bill Geyer, 1560 Tanglewood Drive. My wife Margie is here as well. Wanted to speak on the noise ordinance topic. So we were away the last board of supervisors session 2 weeks ago. However, did look at the live stream. Had a number of concerns. We felt there were some misrepresentations that we wanted to clarify. So that's why we're here today. I have a couple pages here. I'm going to just ensure that I cover all the points. I'm going to probably follow this fairly closely. Did also have some questions at the end. I'm not sure if that's possible. I know because it's not an agenda topic, but we'll start. Before we start, though, I actually have some documentation that I'd like to provide to the board. Could I throw that to you? Five copies of this, and then there's 2 pages. I'll save some time. So So, in Hershey's Mill for over 23 years. Our two daughters, are now young adults and moved away. We've enjoyed the community and the neighborhood friends. Margie's been active in the Girl Scouts, the church. I think Marty was, worked with you a number of years back on the, school district, redistricting. I've been active locally with the, local precinct, helping out at the polls. Our past relationships with our neighbors have been friendly, and we hope that continues. We're also very surprised to be here today to talk about our viewpoints on the noise topic. As you'll hear, we recently felt we were left with no choice but to escalate, our concerns to the board. So starting back in the fall of 2017, we were surprised to hear a series of bands playing in our neighbor's backyard. It was really loud, to the point where things were vibrating on our walls. We thought it was just a special party. And then a couple weeks later, had another band concert. At that point, I walked over to speak to Jack. We kind of explained the fact that it was really loud. It carries throughout our entire house. We have our floor plan is an open floor plan, so it carries quite substantially. Jack explained that his intent was to have the bands every 4 weeks. My view and Margie's view was that 1 or 2 events are reasonable. Neighbors have graduation parties. You have high school graduation, college graduations, or anniversary parties. That type of thing is understandable, but in a residential neighborhood, it's not reasonable to expect to build a band stage and start conducting regular band concerts, live amplified music band concerts. I also mentioned that I'm not going to schedule the use of the inside of my own home. It's very loud. The band stage itself is only about 30 feet from our property line. It's probably about 90 feet to our deck and my office, home office, and our kitchen. That whole side of the house adjacent to Jack is the side of the house that we use. Our garage is on the opposite side. Both Margie and me have musical backgrounds. I was active as a percussionist in my early days through college. Margie was also a string player. During the discussion with Jack, he invited us to join his backyard concerts. I said appreciated the invite, but politely declined. So that was pretty much how we left it at that point. There was only one other. This was the fall of 2017. There's only one concert left at that point. 2018, we recall there were about 6 concerts. We were actually, I think, probably away for some of those. For the most part, I think they were ending on time and scheduled time, 4 to 7 p.m. 2019 was really where the issues really started to begin. And you see what the handout that I gave you a schedule, and it shows you the schedule of bands. And fundamentally, these are professional bands. They're paid performers. So they advertise. I gave you some additional documentation. They advertise. They have Facebook pages, other websites where they post their concerts and advertise them to the followers. One point, so they are professional bands, and when people attend these concerts, there's no admission charge, but they're expected to make a $15 to $20 donation per person. So we'll make you aware of that. July 14th was the first issue that we had. We were still hearing some music at 9 o'clock. It was scheduled to end at 7. I tried calling Jack on the home line, didn't hear it, I'm sure. So then we sent an email, pretty much a short email saying, hey, it's 9 o'clock, we're still hearing music. No response. August 11th, that was really the big anniversary concert, as you can see there. We were actually away in Pittsburgh that weekend for a family party. We got home about 6:30, expecting the party to be, the band concert to be over. And when we pulled in the entrance to Tanglewood Drive, there were literally cars lining both sides of Tanglewood from the Circle, Mill Race, all the way past the Rick and Balls. That's got to be probably 400 or 500 feet at least. Also cars on both sides of the adjacent Candy Tuft. There were 8 or 9 cars parked in the tennis courts parking lot behind our home. So there were quite a few cars. It's actually difficult, I remember now, difficult to pull in our driveway because the cars were parked so closely. My brother-in-law was actually with us. He was, had a meeting in Philadelphia the next day. And his comment was, wow, that's your neighbor? That's really loud. And he was trying to watch a football game in our living room, which is on the adjacent side of the house. And our windows are closed too. We run the air conditioning. At that point, that's when I arranged to, we stepped back. We sent another email. I tried calling that evening. Again, I'm sure he didn't hear Jack didn't hear the call. We sent another email just basically reiterating our unhappiness. Jack knew how we felt about the concerts. No response. So again, that's when I set up a meeting to actually speak to Jack and Sharon. Made arrangements for a Saturday. It was August 17th. So I was in Delaware for an appointment. So needed to have the conversation over the phone. So I was calling from my car. I actually pulled over. So I think, in the Board of Session for Supervisors meeting 2 weeks ago, Jack suggested it was kind of a nasty call. I actually thought I was quite calm, kind of reiterated the points that I've made here today, kind of went through the history of, we were surprised. No one ever spoke to us about the band stage, the intent to build it and host band concerts. Explained that we're unhappy with the concerts not ending on time, and then the frequency of the concerts, and the fact that they were loud, and really basically that we weren't going to tolerate any more disrespect. So at that point, I set the expectation that we would allow the remaining 3 concerts to run for 2019, but that if there were any issues that I would escalate immediately. That was August 17th. The next concert was September 8th. And I have some audio recordings of the concert, which I'd like you to hear. But it ran a little late. So remember, I had set the expectation that the concert should end at 7. It actually ran till about 7:15, 7:20. It was probably one of the quieter concerts, but it's still quite loud. So I have the audio clips that I'd like to play for you. Don't know if that's feasible to do. I have them on my phone. They're very short. I just want to give you a sense of what it's like to sit. The recordings I made are actually on my deck, on the side of the house, which is adjacent right to my office and our kitchen. Let's just see how this goes. So again, if you look at the, there's the 1, 2 set, the 2 pictures that you have. One is a close-up showing the band stage. The other one is kind of a view showing our house and the driveway, which is really a pedestrian easement. It's our property. It's not homeowners association property. It's not township property. Our property line is about the center of that gravel driveway, just to give you a perspective. But I'm standing with my phone on the deck on where I have the circle on our house. Yeah, there's over here. So this is in the morning. You can hear the birds, you can hear nature. This is a little later at noon. Look, I thought it would be helpful for you to hear some examples of what we're hearing in your house. So I'm sitting on my deck on the side of the house there with the phone.
Can I ask a question, Bill?
Sure.
Is that one of the quieter concerts or one of the louder concerts?
I would say that it's one of the quieter. There's a number that are louder. There's others that are about similar to that. Some of them are substantially louder. I'm talking substantially louder.
If you saw the program that was on the live stream this time, I would say from my reaction, there was a lot of people that Jack and some others talked specifically about the issue that you have. And there was also other issues in general about the number of activities that take place over in that particular development, including the things that went in the swimming pool area. We've got a fairly substantial agenda. I'm going to have to ask you either to stay and we'll pick this up after we get done everything else that we need to get done, or if you prefer, you can come back at another meeting. Either way, but we'll probably be here for at least an hour, maybe a little more than that. Some of these guys get itchy pants, and a lot of people don't want to get home to see the speech tonight. But I don't want to shortchange you. So I think the most important thing, we had a pretty good idea of what people were saying from the last time that we met. And I guess David is in the development also. He's able to weigh in on some of the stuff that if we didn't capture the whole thing. The question I have now is, what is it? Well, let me do this. We have had a conversation before the last meeting. We may be going in somewhat of a different direction with this noise thing. We haven't settled on exactly how we're going to handle the noise thing. But that aside, What are you looking for us to do?
So in the draft of the noise ordinance in November, it had a limit of 2 permits per year for residences. We feel that's reasonable. This current draft has it increased to 6, so we're not sure how that happened and what the rationale was. But 2, we would be, I'm gonna say the word happy, but we think 2 is reasonable, 2 permits for this type of thing. And as long as they're spaced at least 4 weeks apart. So I think that's a start. That would be, I think, acceptable to us. The other thing is, the permit fee, don't feel strongly either way about that. I do think, in fairness, it probably should be a fee, if it's considered resources to process the permit. Yeah, in the current ordinance, the decibel levels for residences, the maximum decibel level is, give me a sec. It's 60 decibels during the daytime and 50 at night. And I see this current revision has it increased by 5 decibels, both in daytime and nighttime. And I'm not a sound expert, but I have educated myself a little bit more recently. And the decibel levels are not linear. So a 5 decibel increase is actually not, it's not trivial. So I would have some concerns about why that was increased, and what the rationale was for that over the current ordinance. 14 days advance notice. In the current draft, it requires the permit request to come in 14 days before the event. We think that's fine. So it's really limiting the permits to two per year, as long as they're spaced at least 4 weeks apart, is the main thing.
So good, thanks for that. In the case that you're talking about, they would be running 2 shows a month, a month apart. Like, at the point they're choosing of when they have it, if we get into the 2 permits that would have to be.
Right, two concerts a year, spaced at least 4 weeks. So they're not, a week, 2 weeks in a row, as an example, or 1 week and then 2 weeks later. So one event, and then another one at least a month later, a month or more later.
Just give us a handle on this one. From the various ones that you've seen over the course of 3 years or so, what would you estimate the number of people are in the house?
Marty, who's speaking in mic?
Oh, what would you,
It varies. It varies. I mean,
from what to what roughly? I'm not holding you to it, I'm just curious.
no, we don't attend the concerts. I'm just going by the volume of the clapping and the number of cars parked on the street. The cars will vary from 20 to, as many as, I don't count them, but it seems like around 20 to 100. That's the range. Yeah, and I will tell you that the one event that I mentioned where they were lining the street, they were blocking the fire hydrant too. I mean, that's obviously an issue.
But that was an exception.
Yeah, I mean, that's unusual. That's, the 100's unusual, but 20 to 40, I'm going to say, is probably the average of cars. But, there are some people that walk. The neighbors may walk. Some of the neighbors may walk. But the band followers who aren't neighbors, who are coming from wherever, they're obviously driving. So there are strangers in the neighborhood that are not neighbors.
Well, that's good input, so we appreciate that, and if you want to stick around as Chair Marty Shane has indicated, maybe there'll be an opportunity to discuss a little bit further, but I think that, I think at this point in time, that's good input, just as the same word, there we go, hello, that we can move on with the agenda, and thank you for your time and your input today. Mr. Geyer, thank you.
I want you to come back, so my training is to wait, just to make sure. If it gets too late, then you're gonna have to leave, obviously.
Okay.
That's what we do with the agenda. We don't expect as much as you gave you, but that's all right. We understand that there was a fair number of people here last week and last month when we talked about it, that they were, we can get into that when you're talking about it and see where Rick is.
Yeah.
Rick is the one that's really
We'll
doing
wait.
this.
Thanks, Mrs. Guy.
So there we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we got another one? Go ahead. As long as you go over to the microphone and you do your name and address and give us the subject matter.
Really quick, Joe Reed, 249 Chatham Way, Hershey's Mill. Hi. My wife and I moved here in June, and I shortly thereafter found out that, probably a three-part question. First one being that I understand that there's plans that have been approved to build some type of a structure 15 inches from the curb line. I'm not sure where that's at other than the township. Is that true?
There was a plan to amend the ordinance to allow for buildings to be closer to the street along Pelly Pike, but that hasn't gone anywhere.
Oh, that was here, that was out
That
front
was
here.
out front here.
Oh, the
That was the T&D ordinance.
Traditional neighborhood development overlay ordinance, which was under review.
That's resting at the moment.
Traditional neighborhood development overlay, which was under review. We put a pin in that. The board is probably going to speak about that particular ordinance, not in terms of the ordinance itself, but of a process to have further public engagement and outreach. We're probably going to talk about that next month or in the next meeting or two to see how we're going to roll out the process to have further public input. So if that's what you're referring to, that process is on hold right
Can we
now.
also add that you said 15 inches?
Correct.
Oh, no, there was no plan for 15
No,
inches.
it's not 15 inches, 12 feet, wasn't it?
15 feet.
15 feet.
15 feet, yeah.
And the original idea was that if anyone redid any of those buildings, without getting too technical, it had to be 15 feet. That in the second draft would change to a minimum of 15 feet, so you could put a setback further back if you wanted to. So it's-
We have 15 inches.
but that didn't pass, so it's on hold right now. It's
Yeah.
I
under
can't.
further consideration.
That's that one. Okay.
Thank you. That's it.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. That was too easy.
Chatham Village is one of my favorite villages in Hershey's Mill.
Thank you, ours too.
And you got new drainage there now, they did a good job, so hopefully that will help in the long term.
It's been good since June, I can say that.
Well, there you go. They did a good job.
All right.
Be careful what you say, might be your neighbor in a week.
As long as there's no ban, you're fine.
Please, as long as they don't hit your house with the stray shot.
Well, that's happened. Right up to 16.
All right, we stopped that. Mike, you gotta be quiet, Mike. Remember now.
Because I'm the one that wants to leave Big 30, so you guys do whatever you want. I'm sorry.
We have a fire marshal here who used to be a supervisor. He had one incident that he does come to visit us if there's an incident, or he's got to give the fire company's report at the second Monday of the month. And that's Carmen Batavio, and he has an incident to talk about that, and that'll take care of that.
Welcome, Carmen. Good to see you.
Welcome,
Good
Carmen.
evening, board. If I could, if anybody's blocking the fire hydrant, ever, you call 911. 911, forever, okay, please? Thank you, good evening, board. We had an incident, 129 of 20, which is last Wednesday, 1301 Westchester Pike, that happens to be the Wiggins complex, I'll call it. We have a batch that is used for storage by the furniture company, and they're redoing the inside, so there was a bunch of debris in the back. The origin of fire was that they had large umbrella boxes that they were moving around, and they hit halogen spotlights, knocked the lights down, you saw in my report, and then put the boxes under them. Then for some reason, the lights kicked on. I haven't found out yet whether it was a timer or someone hit a switch. The halogen created the heat, ignited the boxes, and started the fire. There was an active smoke alarm back there. It did warn them. I will say that stations 54, 56, Westchester, 51, and 52, there were 4 companies. That's first call for 4 companies to respond. Made an excellent stop. Within 5 minutes in that old building, it would have been a second and third alarm. So,
Very good.
It's in the fire department's backyard, isn't it?
It's at the other end of the property.
It goes from there.
But the time of day you're talking about, there's not a lot of staff because we split between 54 and 56. That's why we have other companies coming.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Carmen.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for the update.
Thank you, Carmen. The financial report, there isn't any, the minutes and the treasurer's report, I looked at the minutes. John, there was only, one comment, I'll call you tomorrow, I'll call you with that. I can't remember what it was.
I would appreciate it if you could, point it
It's
out
not, it's
now.
not a big deal.
Okay, but are you gonna approve the minutes, subject to a future phone call?
It's all right, the question, you know what it is, all right?
I'd like to move for the approval of the minutes of Tuesday, January 21st, 2020, subject to a phone call when Marty gets his memory back.
I second.
You did have a big time in California, didn't you?
Second.
I get
All in
it.
favor?
Aye. That's beautiful. It wasn't a game changer, I must tell you, so. I read it 6 times to make sure I didn't miss any. The treasurer's report, Mike, you doing that since Carmen left?
Yeah, I've looked at the information that John, our Director of Finance, has put in front of us. And with regard to the bills to pay, they look good. I would comment on one of them, simply batch 1 of 6, page 3, and it's all it is a comment. It was reference to Miller Concrete and some materials that was purchased to redo the bridge coping on Forest Lane. Public Works did a great job getting that bridge back in working order, that culvert bridge, and did a really nice job with it. The other one, John, I went to see whether this was accurate or not. Batch 1 of 6, page 5, the second item down, this is general fund. PSTATS UC Group Trust, the balance due was paid at $1,296.41. It says third quarter filing, didn't you mean fourth quarter?
No, there was an amended return. Kelly made basically a mistake in the filing. And there's no penalty. It's just when she was reconciling the year end or clearing accounts, she realized the discrepancy. So there was no penalty.
No, okay. So the number seemed high, and I thought, that's the fourth quarter. How come? So, yeah, okay, gotcha. But everything else looks good, and I would, if Mr. Chair, may I offer a motion?
Yeah.
I would motion to graciously accept the report from Mr. Ralshaw and graciously accept the receipts and approve the disbursements as listed in the report today.
For a second,
I'll second it.
comments or questions from the board, from the audience? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
One note also that's worth mentioning, we are starting to get some money back associated with all the grants that we've been awarded. John has made note that our capital reserve was fueled with nearly $80,000 associated with the Paoli Pike Trail project. John, was that where that grant was from?
Yeah.
Partial?
Yeah.
So it's a meaningful number, but it's only the tip of the iceberg of the grants that have been awarded. So good job there. Glad it's in our coffers. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mike. The next item is item number, old business 11A, and that's the discussion of the code of ethics, which Mike actually refers to as a code of conduct. That's been in our packet. Mike, you want to shed some light on this?
Well, this is a series of statements. Initially, the draft is as code of ethics. We're, as elected officials and other public officials in municipal government, we're bound by ethical standards that are state legislated. We also have a financial disclosure statement form that is to be submitted annually for the prior year. So they are due about this time of year, and that's for recognizing the prior year to ensure that there are no conflicts of interest and those sorts of matters. But this one is it's a discretionary statement that some municipalities have adopted, and it is annually presented to the elected officials, the professional staff of the township, and all the advisory boards and commissions to acknowledge by signature the code of conduct for various elements of how we are to conduct ourselves in public, our relationships to others, relative to potential conflicts of interest, gifts, things of that nature. Where I work in East Bradford Township, well, we have had this code of ethics, we call it, but again, code of conduct could be relevant as more to the point. We've had that in place for 10 or 12 years now. And it is, in today's world of government, transparency, our conduct, the way we handle our business, it's a great reminder each year for us to review that as individuals who are serving our local governments in this case, as to what our conduct needs to be. And so it's not onerous. If we go about the business that we normally do, acting in the sunshine and transparency and accessibility that we've displayed over the years, it's a nice document to be able to refresh each year, all of us. And again, appearance-wise, it's another level of saying that the standards that we're held to, which are higher than the average citizen, if you will, because of the roles that we're in, it's a good thing. So that was why I brought it to the attention of the board and whether they were interested to pursue this.
Mike is a little envious of us here at East Goshen. So he thought that one of the things that would even us out if he brought this thing for us to consider, so he could take full credit for this. So I just want you to know that it is a great document. I want to thank John and Walshaw for making some minor changes to this based on the discussion we had at the last meeting, and it makes it pretty nice. So I just wanted everybody to realize that we fortunately have not had an incident that, with respect to an ethics violation for all the time I've been on the board, and that's been 34 years.
I come from New Jersey, that can't be said.
Thursday might be 34 minutes. But the truth of the matter is, Mike basically gave the reason for doing this, and the way people at each year have to sign off on this document, and if we prove it, and it does make them aware of what's going on. It's not that we have a problem. Some of you may have read that there was an issue down in Kennett Township with the manager taking some funds, a different amount of funds. We have a lot of ways of checking that here. I just want anybody to think that every municipality is run the same way, because it's not. But the point of the matter is, this is a good recommendation by Mike, and I just want the board to comment on it, and if someone really feels strongly about this, they might put a motion on the floor for us to consider.
I want to thank you, Marty. I just want to mention one other thing. There is there's nothing punitive or penalty if this is distributed, if it were to be adopted and distributed to all, in not signing it. There's not a penalty built in. I know in East Bradford Township in years prior, we've had a couple folks that have questioned it, and we maybe even had a couple that said they weren't going to sign it, that they didn't need to sign it type of thing. But again, even if you don't sign it and it's distributed and you have a chance to read it, it keeps your consciousness tuned in. So I want to share that there is no penalty if this comes to pass and someone decides that for whatever reason they don't feel comfortable signing it, they still have a copy of it.
For those down at the other end of the table, before all their oxygen is sucked out of the room, do you have any comments?
Go ahead.
I would like to say that I think that it is very important that we sign something, a code of conduct, code of ethics. And I think that I would like to see this changed, the title changed from code of ethics to code of conduct. And I'd like it to go further and be a little bit even more restrictive. But I think that we need something in place, and I would be willing to sign it as it is now.
The note I would like to make is that this will be signed by the Board of Supervisors along with all of the other employees in the township. We are not exempting ourselves. I agree with Michelle's comment on code of conduct rather than ethics. And frankly, I like it the way it's written. I appreciate it, Mike. So
Good start.
I like
Yeah.
it.
There's,
Absolutely. And if we have a problem, we can deal with it down the road, but I like this.
But this also is supposed to apply to the ABCs. Does that mean it applies to the municipal authority, the zoning board, planning
Everybody.
commission, and so on? Thank you.
Yes.
Just want to make sure that was
Comment.
clear.
It's broken into two sections. The first is the conflict of interest statement, and the second is the code of conduct guidance. So it's, there are two
There.
aspects to it. But I'm on a lot of not-for-profit boards, and we have one of these on every other board I sit on. I think it's a great idea.
I think, Michelle, that, well, wait a minute, I think, Michelle, it may need to be left the way it is, since there's two components to this thing,
That's fine.
because otherwise you.
That's fine. And like David said, there's
Mike, if
the,
you, since this is yours, why don't you make the motion?
All right, I would, and thank you, colleagues, for consideration of this, and the support of it. I would offer a motion, to the board to, adopt the, draft in front of us listed as the Code of Ethics, for East Goshen Township, and, to, circulate this to all of our, colleagues, staff, and ABCs for their consideration and acknowledgement through signature.
But not appointed officials?
and
And, excuse me, and appointed officials. Thank you, John.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Any more comments or questions up here? In the audience? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next, we move over to new business. The first issue is we need to consider an escrow release for 1420 Strasburg Road. It's the Brakeman property. Does anybody care to make a motion to that effect?
I'd like to move that, we release the escrow of $6,706 for, escrow release of number 8 for 1420 East Strasburg Road.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Just so people know out in the audience, this is the end of the escrow that they put in when they developed the property. So with that, I will ask if there's anybody have any questions up here in the audience. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. The next item is an interesting item, something we have to do first. Michelle Truitt has given the township her notice of intention to participate in the township's health insurance program, which the supervisors are entitled to do that based on the law that was, I think, taking place around
2012.
19.
Actually, it was 85.
Was it 85?
It was
Yeah, it was 85, and it was revised, and updated in 12.
2012.
Rick is here because he remembers these things that go way back to many ages, so I just want you to know that I try to make it look current. Rick is probably right, and I'm probably wrong, but it's semi-good, didn't it? But anyway, Michelle, you want to tell people what you're up to?
I just would like to submit to the board my request to be enrolled in the employee benefits coverage, joining the high deductible PPO program as well as the dental program.
This is purely an acknowledgement. There's no action on this. Thank you. I'm supportive. Thank you,
Thank you.
Michelle.
Thank you.
This is for both you and your husband, correct?
For my husband, yes.
Ma'am.
Michelle, it might be prudent for the people that are here and people that are on the live stream, if, or Rick, or whoever wants to do it, if can give us an idea of what you think this is gonna cost the township.
Yes, so is the number here, it's approximately $19,000.
I want to say $1,970.
Okay, so that's that. It's part of it, when the township has this program, it's interesting because Michelle will be the first one that's ever taken advantage of this. which probably goes to show you that she's the first one that's under 65 and the supervisor of the township for years.
Well, actually, Mike is still under the age of 65, so.
I am, oh, that is so nice of you. No, I'm in my
Yeah, but he's
69th year.
But he's closing the gap mighty fast. He's closing the gap.
He wish I was 65 again.
Yeah, I didn't want to say anything.
Michelle,
but
I
I-
thought you were buds for life.
Okay, good.
Buds for life.
Okay, we don't have to take any action, right?
No, so it's up to the minutes.
You want to say something?
Yeah.
Please. You
Mine,
gotta go over here, so.
Oh, yes, yes, sir.
I read somewhere tonight that cost the township is, it's gonna be $26,000, and you said, I think, 1,900?
1900 per month.
Yeah, it's a little less than 2,000 per month. Where did you read 2,600?
I'm not sure where I saw, I
Yeah.
was reading some stuff before I came.
Nobody has asked me that question.
26,000, I saw, annually,
A little less, slightly less than that, yes.
okay. There's a little bit personal question, I guess, but does your husband have health insurance?
No, he does not.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Neither do I at this time. I'm on Cobra.
Okay, moving right along, that takes care of the matter. And next is 12C, which is consider authorizing the chairman to execute the declaration of restricted covenants for the Hersheyville Dam. Rick, you want to explain what's
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, the short story is, because we're getting money from the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, they want us to put a restricted covenant on the dam that basically says it's going to be a park.
In perpetuity.
Yeah, but the deed says it's going to be a park. It's going to be a park, so it doesn't really
We can't
change it.
change the use.
But if you want the federal money, this is part of the,
That's part of the deal.
so.
The good news is, when the fish finally let us start in June, we'll be able to start in June. We hope to finish that down there this year, and that will be a great relief. Shortly thereafter, we're going to be able to do the big reservoir down on Reservoir Road, and hopefully that'll get done fairly soon, and everybody will be happy.
And for any of you that know it, Joe, you probably do, the property that's privately owned that was in bank receivership on the corner, the Hershey's Mill, at the corner of Hershey's Mill Road and Green Hills, that is now in private ownership, and you've already seen some initial work underway. So that's one that's a landmark for all of us, and to see that come back to a state of repair and maybe glory will be a wonderful thing, and it will supplement and complement the park when it's done.
They're
It'll be private residence, yeah, it is a residence, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the board approve your signature on the declaration of restrictive covenant.
I second that.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wait a minute, does anybody have any comments up here?
Sorry.
I'm paying attention now, John.
Yes.
Hey, man, the audience have anything to say? No. We have a good time up here, just in case you
We
guys don't
should,
realize it.
we should.
All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
The next two items go together, item D and E, they're number 12. They have to do with requesting information from PennDOT with respect to some work that was done on Boot Road. And Rick, I'm going to fill everybody in.
So, as you know, as a result of some inadvertent returns on Boot Road up by Wilson Drive, PennDOT had Sunoco's engineer perform a geophysical survey. They did one back in June, July. They supplemented it with another one in October, and that is currently posted on our website. PennDOT's engineer has requested Sunoco's engineer to do a couple more cross sections, and so they're currently under review with PennDOT, and at some point they will be released in the website. Pipeline Task Force has requested that the board take two actions. One, be to file a right to know request with PennDOT to get all the documentation associated with the surveys and PennDOT's reviews, that type of stuff. And the second part would be to have the township engineer, and Pannoni has a geologist on staff, have them review it and provide comments back to the township. So the suggestion I would suggest is that the board authorized me to submit the right to know request, and then once we get the information from PennDOT, then we can have Pannoni look at it.
As you may know, we have a book up here that we got. There is recommended motions in here. Rick has changed his thinking a little bit to get all the pieces of paper now so we can review it at one time. And I think that's a good idea. Is there anybody who cares to make a motion?
I'll make the motion, that we ask, that we have staff submit a right to know request to PennDOT, as far as the Boot Road geophysical survey is regarding. Does it need to say anything else? And have Panoni, our engineer, review all the findings together once all of the information is provided.
Anybody else have any comments or questions up here in the audience? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Very good. Our task force, which Dave is our liaison to, we're very appreciative of the fact that we're doing this. There's a couple issues under any other matter. Mike, I know you have one of them.
I do?
Yes, you have to appoint.
Oh, yes, yes. Annually, at the beginning of January, there's municipal reorganization amongst townships where the board puts itself in a position of chair or vice chair, and all the appointments where the advisory boards and commissions are renewed or new appointments are made, solicitors, the township professionals. There was an oversight in reappointing one of our members of the Stormwater Appeals Board, who is also a member of our municipal authority, Dana Pizarro. And we would like to say we're appreciative of Dana wanting to continue to serve, and I would make a motion to reappoint Dana to the Stormwater Appeals Board at this time.
Second motion.
Is there comments or questions from the board, from the audience? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
That's great. There's another motion.
Mr. Chairman, there is another personnel matter that we had discussed. That was the matter of Leo Sinclair, and I would like to make a motion to have Leo Sinclair appointed to the Conservancy Committee.
I would second that.
Comments or questions from the board? All those in favor of the, anybody on the audience? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Nine. 4-1 time.
Thank you.
And who will contact Dana, and who will contact Leo? You will?
Yeah, we'll send them a letter, email, and everyone's letter.
Rick will.
Thank you.
There's no liaison reports. Rick, there's a couple of,
These are, I guess, I'm not, I guess rather significant. So, they deal with Sunoco, and if you recall, Department of Environmental Protection put a permit bar on any new permits being released to Sunoco, pending some resolution to some issues with the Revolution pipeline, which is a separate pipeline owned by Energy Transfer. So, short story was Sunoco, DEP has released that bar, and so they can now issue permits. And then these two segments, the one deals with the pipeline segment between the Executive Center and Quaker. The second one deals with the pipeline segment between New Kent and the old driveway that went back into Bowtree. And both of those segments, they had an inadvertent return during the initial bore. Based on a settlement agreement with Clean Air Council, the agreement was that if there's a IR during an initial bore, and there's a subsequent HTD has to go in that right away, they have to submit a reevaluation report to DEP to support whether or not the HTD is still appropriate or not. And there's a public comment period. Anyway, so Sunoco submitted the required information, and DEP has approved both of those. So Sunoco is now able to proceed. And we posted on the website, Sunoco on Monday morning, Sunoco completed the bore between Bowtree and St. Simon and Jude. So I think they still need to make an actual tie-in in front of Bowtree, but once that is made, and that should be made either it was made today or today or tomorrow, 16-inch line will be complete through East Goshen. And then the 20-inch line, they are currently drilling between what we call Quaker and underneath the driveway up in front of the giant sign. They have broke through and they're in the process of reaming that. And that pullback would be scheduled for sometime in March. And then with these last two sections, Sunoco is now free to do them whenever. And then going back to the Bowtree to St. Simon and Jude, They have brought the equipment back in. They will be setting up the drill, mud machines, all that stuff. And I'll be commencing that drill for the 20-inch. That's about a 7,000 foot long bore. And to put it in perspective, they started it last March for the 16-inch. So with luck, by the end of the year, that'll be done. And the other two are fairly short. So, like I said, if everything goes right, they could be done the pipe work in East Ocean by the end of 2020.
What it means to the layperson is that in 2021, they can do all the restoration work that's necessary. And I warned the board that we're probably going to get more complaints from the work that they do restoring everything than we ever did when anything that had to do with the pipeline. We had a lot of complaints along the way. So we have to be prepared ourselves, or at least the staff does anyway, to answer a lot of questions and be very accommodating to our residents at the same time. Put the pedal to the metal when Sunoco can get the job done.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention that members of the pipeline task force feel that the permits that were released by DEP were done inappropriately and against their own regulations, and there's some correspondence going back and forth.
I'll circulate the languages in the settlement agreement, and it's rather sparse. It says that they have to submit evaluation reports, that certain people have the ability to make comments, and at some point DEP takes action on them. But there's nothing in that settlement agreement that says there has to be 4 review period, 4 comments periods, or anything like that. So, but I'll circulate that. In fact, I'll put that on the webpage.
Rick is our resident expert in the pipeline. So if there's anything anybody ever needs about the pipeline, Rick is the person to see. Some of us aren't too bad with respect to what's going on, but Rick is the expert, and he has done a marvelous job. And if he says what he says, and David says what he says, I'm voting for Ricky. Don't take this personally, David, but I don't like the idea you were in California.
No, I just reported that pipeline numbers.
Yeah.
That's very good. I have to tell you, that shit was sneaking way out.
I'm frankly glad to know them both.
Now, we can go back to where we were, going up. The most important thing for us is what you would like to see us do or not do.
Which Mr. Meyer mentioned
But
already.
you may want to have Rick, you would just want to give a capsule of where you are, because Rick has been the one that's been fighting through doing this
Well,
stuff.
the impetus for this was that, I guess a couple months ago, Sunoco ended up working past 10 o'clock at night. And as a result, our noise ordinance said they can't, but that we have to go out and measure the noise level to cite them. And that was the problem. We would have to have an engineer there on site. So we started looking at tweaking the ordinance to address that issue, specifically about the, after 10 o'clock, what the noise level was. And then I talked to the code guy who has to issue these permits. One of the concerns was, well, we get these requests, we send 1,000-foot letters out to everybody. So we should address that so we have enough time to get the letters out, which is why we put the fee in. And then there was discussions. I heard some people like 2, some people felt people should have more flexibility on what they want to do on their own property. Back and forth on that. And then I got the idea, and I talked to solicitor, why don't we just prohibit construction after 10 o'clock at night before 7 in the morning? And so I should have for the next meeting a draft ordinance that basically says that you cannot do any construction or demolition outside of the building between 10 o'clock at night and 7 in the morning. And it doesn't really matter whether it's a public utility. So basically preclude anybody, Sunoco, from doing that, or the water company or anybody else from doing work outside. Which would mean we just leave the noise ordinance alone. So I need to make a couple tweaks to that ordinance, and that'll be back before the board. And if that's the case, then we don't have to do anything in the noise
Okay, thanks for that update.
Is that the table, table one that you're referring to?
No, the noise orders would just stay the same.
Okay.
It's already on the book now.
I have a couple of questions, Bill. Now, I noticed that in the paperwork that you had given us, the papers you gave us, you have, there's the third page, it has a list of Celtic Spirit, the band, and it has the date of October the 7th, and the location was the Jackyard on Tanglewood. And it says 34 guests. So do you know if that was accurate?
I just noticed that.
Have you ever
myself.
taken photographs of the number of cars on the street by any
No.
chance?
I mean, these are our
I'm just-
neighbors.
I'm just wondering.
I mean, like,
Well, some of our neighbors, I mean.
Some of
they're
them are-
cooking
I'm
on
just-
outside.
Some of them may not be, I was just wondering, like,
Just make sure you jump up to the machine, even though.
yeah, and the reason I ask that is because I think that, you know, if the parking is that much of a problem, and if this is an ongoing issue, then it needs to be addressed.
I don't disagree. What we're,
Could you give your first name?
this is Margie Geyer. I don't disagree. Our concern is the noise. So, and they are our neighbors, and we don't want to walk over and video their party. And they know how we feel. So I want to be respectful of, I mean, we've never called 911. Like, it just, we intend to live there.
Sure. We understand the issue, and we're empathetic to both sides of this problem, because it's not an argument that we like to be in the middle of, sort of. But I would say that it would be probably to your advantage if Rick is going to go the way he said, and I suspect that he will, then you might want to look at the current ordinances as they are and recognize that you're not a construction. I don't think that's an issue of what we're talking about. If there's something with respect to the current ordinances that you think need to be addressed, then you may want to come. I'm sure that you and others will come back to any meeting that we have on the noise ordinance, because it's fairly meaningful. However, I will say, as far as I know, we haven't had much complaint about the noise ordinance in its current form. Sunoco might have a problem with it, because we've cited them a couple of times, but that's the only thing that I remember anybody doing for quite some time, because most people are able to, in fairness, most people are able to work it out between each other, and we don't have to do it and get involved in things.
Yes, I think there are a couple issues that I can see with, if you try and stick with the current ordinance. One is there actually is no specification on maximum number of permits. Now, I understand in practice from the noise control office, Mark, that in practice, the limit's 1 or 2 permits. He will not issue residential noise ordinance exception permits more than 1 or 2 to a specific residence per year, but that's not specific language that's in the ordinance. So
Mark and I went back through in his recollection of these, and I would say most of the time somebody's having a wedding or graduation party or one of those type of events, depending on how many kids you have, and that kind of thing happens maybe once every couple of years. Occasionally somebody has,
sure,
somebody gets married and somebody graduates from high school, but primarily, and in reality, our expectation is, we send a 1,000-foot letter out and ask them to be very respectful. So that's probably where the 2 came from.
right. So I guess the question would be, if you're able to provide guidance to Mark to say issue no more than 2 permits per year, then I think that's fine. That's probably workable. The other though concern I think he would have is the time that he gets to process it. I think he got the final permit last year with only 5 days notice. So that was an issue. So-
And yeah, that, I mean, it depends when it comes in. If we get it, soon enough, I mean, this way, it's a form letter. So you change the name and the date, and you go into the map program, GIS program, you punch the property and punch the 1,000-foot buffers, and, it's a team effort to stuff the 25 or 30 envelopes you have to stuff and make around the mail. So it's doable. But obviously, if you had a week or a little longer to do it, it'd make it a little more
Sure.
easier. But so again, our goal is that we're big on 1,000.
The other thing too is, and there was a fair reasonable number of people. I don't know that the room was full, but there was a fair amount of people here. And a lot of them talked about what takes place in that particular community with respect to things that go on independent of your situation. And things that go on at the pool and whatever else goes on over there. And it's a community spirit kind of a thing, and apparently it works. That doesn't seem to be bothering anybody, from what I understand, at least from most of the people that are here. I don't know if it does or it doesn't, but it didn't appear to for the people that were here. Jack was very articulate in what he said, and was very fair about what he said. He wasn't pushing one side or the other, just telling like it was, as far as I remember. So we're gonna have to take a look at what we're doing, or what we have done in the past, and the kind of questions that you're asking, and the recommendations that you're asking, and see what we can do about that. We're probably gonna have a problem with respect to the number of events that he has versus whatever permitting we choose to do. So I would expect that from what was said, and we'll have to work with him to see how we can work it out. Other than that, it's going to be neighbor to neighbor kind of a thing. So we'll have to see what we can do, because it's very difficult. As far as I know, we've had some issues. Most of them are kind of like fence problems, and it really hasn't been a noise issue. It hasn't been a parties issue. So it's kind of like a virgin. We're plowing earth that hasn't been plowed before.
Well, I'm sure not many township residents are expecting to be able to build a band stage in their backyard and start hosting live band concerts.
Well,
I mean,
it's true. However, there is one that does that, and somehow it has to be. I mean, we can't be everything to everybody. And I'm thinking about, there's a lady that actually lives in Hershey's Mill that has a problem with a light that's significantly far away, and it was certainly within the requirements of our code and regulations, and yet she feels that it's something necessary to be done to protect that light. It's just one of those things that we have rules. If the rules are acceptable rules, they're current rules, they make sense, you just have to live with them, and there's nothing you can really do. So I don't know how this is going to turn out, but hopefully it'll be turned out so that everybody feels comfortable with it. And I know that my good friend David over here will make sure that things are workable with respect to personal estates, and we'll just have to see how this thing turns out. Somebody made a recommendation that why are we fooling around with anything that works if we really have a problem with the construction workers, which is what it is. And so that's and David was the one who put this to our attention from some phone calls he got and issues, and we were trapped because unless you have someone on site with the measurement, you can't cite them for anything. Well, that doesn't make sense. So that started us down this path. So we hopefully the next time, the next meeting you plan to have it done?
Yes.
So 2 weeks from tonight, we should have that draft, and you can pick that up off the internet on Saturday or Sunday before the meeting.
And come back to the next meeting and when that's in there.
I was gonna say, well, that's gonna be the construction end of things. Do you know if your neighbors actually are facing the amps away from,
So I'll make a comment
That's
about it. If you look at I did include in there, the residential map. So our property.
yeah.
The band stage is in the rear of his property that faces his house. So really, if you look at the map, behind him is homeowners, the homeowners tennis courts, and then some township buffer strips. So the people on the opposite street, the stage is facing away from them, plus they have, some buffer. Really, it's us and the neighbors on the other side that are really the direct recipients. And sound travels funny, who knows? It may be, my guess is it's bouncing off his house and coming directly, at our house.
Well, that's another thing I was gonna ask, is there any, maybe we can talk to, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of something that could possibly help mitigate the sound coming back your way.
So the speakers on the platform, they're facing the house.
His house.
It's a brick and box house.
Yeah.
It's actually,
So,
Now, and I'm sure other neighbors, I'm surprised that the neighbors on the other side, barely notice it, because, you heard the recording,
Actually, they were here at the last meeting.
Right.
And they attended the concerts and were in favor of it, so.
I was just, if they put the speakers on the deck and face them towards the woods and the tennis court, would be bothering the deer as opposed to,
that's a problem too.
well, but no, it'd be going into the valley where all the shrubbery is, and you wouldn't have to come back off the house.
Well, let's see where we go.
Deliberation.
I don't know whether there's a balance or not. David, you might end up talking with Jack just on this singular matter. Marty is right, though. With municipal governments, when there's a dispute or a concern amongst property owners, municipalities don't like to get involved in that. Whether it's stormwater, noise has a little bit more resonance, if you will, for some municipal involvement. And we'll see if we can come up with a Solomon solution that will satisfy the Guyers, whether it's we go back to looking at some permit numbers, whether we let the existing ordinance lay as it is, and see how it proceeds with some increased sensitivity with the property owner with all this discussion. This is a singular matter that you brought before us, and it's not to be considered any way but seriously, because it's affecting you guys, and we want to be respectful of that. The sensitivity has been raised, and I think that there'll be discussions and see what may help there to satisfy, your concerns, and at the same time, those residents that came to support it and say that this was part of a really nice neighborhood, we enjoy it, try and find a balance there so that they can continue to have it. So there's some maybe there's middle ground, maybe there's not, I don't know yet.
So if I could add some comments then. So, I think the existing noise levels in the ordinance are fine. The issue is the permits, so when the township is issuing a permit, that's basically an exception. We have a right, all the township residents have a right to peacefully enjoy the use of the property. When you're issuing this temporary noise permit, you're infringing on those rights. So you have a duty and obligation to protect every resident.
I've done a lot of reading on that. Case law actually says that yes, you do have a right to quiet enjoyment of your property, but you also do not have the right to a noiseless society. When you choose to move into a neighborhood, you choose to listen to garbage trucks and tree trimmers, and my neighbor mows his lawn every Sunday afternoon. And I don't have the right to a noiseless Sunday afternoon. So the case law goes on both sides.
No,
So when you talk about protecting,
we're not talking about a noiseless Sunday afternoon, but
I just want to make the point that there's noise in the neighborhood. So we'll
Let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can do.
One of the things that's very interesting about this whole thing, the longer you sit up here, sooner or later, you're gonna have an issue that people are sensitive to, and this is one of them that David has. I gotta tell you, you're gonna be here when my friends from the from my development, which is right behind the Mountain Institute, show up. If you think it is a little pressure on you now, you're going to see them in action. And I'm sure that everybody else here is probably, and Mike, when he was manager over there in Bradford, he probably has some people that have done the same thing. So what we try to do is we try to get this thing worked out somehow. Now, there are some things that just aren't workable and satisfy everybody. So I don't know what we do. They're the toughies, and this might be one of them. So we'll work with it. Rick is very sensitive to everybody in this township. He does a great job balancing things out. Hopefully you'll take a look at what he comes up with.
Okay.
But you shared respectfully, we really appreciate that, you sensitized us, I think the neighbors are aware of the conversation, and let's see where we go from there. We don't know whether there's gonna be a perfect solution, but let's go from there and see where we go.
Okay, one final point though. So, listening to the last session and then in our discussion here, I hear some suggestions at times that these band concerts are some sort of community event and maybe warrant special treatment. In our view is they're not. They're private events on private property. So.
Okay, good point. Yeah. I'll make a motion. To adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
All right, thanks,
Bill.
Mr. and
Thanks,
Mrs.
Bill.
No, that was fast. Mike is the one that wants to get out of first.
Well, I do that for the good of my fellow supervisors because I think about you. Now, I know you have a copy